The first one, I was 18 and I lived in Houston, Texas. And I was in a terrible abusive relationship with a guy. And we went on a boating trip. And it was at a place called Hippie Hollow. And it's this huge in Austin, Texas, this big creator made lake. And people were tubing and jumping in the water. And tubing is where you put a big inner tube from a truck on the back, tie a rope on it, and then put it on the back of a speedboat. And so I tried it, and they told us there was this other girl on one side and I was on the other side, and they said, you know, whatever you do, we're going to be going 70, 80 miles an hour. So hold on and do not push off or you'll go through the middle. So the girl pushed off and we're going round and round, and I was getting kind of bored. And I said, well, I think I'll push off. And just as I did it, the next thing I know, I went through the tube. I felt a second of excruciating pain, and then I was out. And the next thing I know, I woke up and I was in bliss. I felt amazing. And there are fish going by and plants wafting in front of me. And I'm like, what is going on? And I look over and I see my body just hanging vertically like this. And I wasn't shocked. I just said, you know, I didn't even think about it. I just remember the feeling of pure bliss. And then I'm down there just enjoying this feeling. And all of a sudden, this bright light comes to me, and I start getting this download of information. And it was like languages I'd never seen, mathematical equations, geometry, science, art, all these things that I had never seen and, you know, didn't know what they were. And then that stopped. And then I hear this voice say, it's time for you to either go to that light or go back in your body and surface, because your body can't maintain under the water anymore. And I said, well, what do I do? And they said, the choice is yours. So I simply put my head back into the body and I came up. And I was just floating on top of the water, totally in shock. And at one point, the boat saw me and they came back, and I had been under the water for 20 minutes. And nobody believes that. But when I had my show, I interviewed this woman called Lynn K. Russell, and she had interviewed 2,500 people that had had near-death experiences. And she said, Leora, 20 minutes is nothing. We've had people wake up in the morgue 48 hours after they've been dead. So, you know, but what that did, that changed the trajectory of my life. That shifted everything for me. All of a sudden, I became aware. So when we come into these physical beings, we set up signposts along the way, and these signposts are there to wake us up. Remember, I said we start out as a caveman, end up like Gandhi, and somewhere in the middle, we start to awaken. And so that was a signpost that I had set up for myself, I guess. And it woke me up. And that's when I started the shift. Well, and from the first one, that was the awakening. And I started to experience all of these wonderful things that helped me grow and learn and, you know, be who I am today. Now, the second one was last year, and I was going through a really difficult time period. I had found out my husband had been cheating on me, and I just couldn't get through it no matter what I tried. And I tried all of the things that I teach, meditating every day, you know, exercising every day, you know, keeping on this mental place of well-being, but I kept falling into depression. And I couldn't seem to get out of it. And what it was connected to was abandonment. So the abandonment of my mother was connected to the abandonment of my husband. And that's why it was so, I was releasing these energies. I was all of this energy that, and we release energy every single moment of our existence. Sometimes we don't know it, but I was releasing this energy, and it was so powerful because it had been connected to the mother. But I was up hiking, and with my daughter, and it was a hot, hot day, 90 some degrees, and I just couldn't, take it anymore, and I had to sit down. And uh, I sat down, and my blood pressure was fine, and so I said, "Help me up." And as soon as she started to lift me up, I started to black out. I go, "I'm going down." The next minute, I know I am in that place of bliss again. And I was in like the universe. It wasn't bright, it wasn't any place particular, but it was definitely a spirit floating in the multiverse somewhere. And the immediate thing that I thought to myself as I said, "Oh, I'm so glad to be out of that existence." And I was shocked that I said that, but thinking back on it, but that was the first thing I said. I thought, "Wow, that was hard. I'm glad to be out of it." Then the next thing, and I back and way far away, I hear this screaming, and I hear this voice, and the voice says to me, "If you go right now, your daughter will not be able to handle it." And so immediately I went right back in, and I go back into the body. I hear my daughter screaming, "Mom, mom." And I go back, I'm in the physical, and I don't really remember anything at that point. And I'm like, "What, are there bugs on me?" I knew I had fallen back in the physical. I knew I had fallen. And for some reason, I thought there was a bear coming after me. And she goes, "You were having a seizure." So I guess I was having a grand mal seizure, eyes rolled in, tongue out, and all of that. I started to feel, I get up and I go, "We should walk down the hill." And I had a headache, and I think it was sunstroke, but it was enough to kill me. So she's like, "You're going to emergency." And I go, "I don't want to go to emergency." And then I started to remember what I had thought. I was amazed. It reminded me of who I was in this physical being. And so the next, I went to bed that night, and I was fine. I knew it was a heat stroke. And I woke up in the morning and I felt like all this pain and suffering had released. It had gone. And it did. I needed that signpost to wake me up, to say, "Hey, you chose this. Let's finish it and get on. Get on with your existence." It's a trajectory shift. All of a sudden, you're on a new path. And that's what it does. I don't know if it heightens any of your gifts. I mean, I know I'm a great healer, and maybe it did, but all I know is it shifts your trajectory, whichever way you're going.